At the risk of giving an internet troll more attention, I want to address a piece that Taylor Lorenz wrote yesterday for Wired. An initiative aimed at boosting Democrats online offers influencers up to $8,000 a month to push the party line. All they have to do is keep it secret and agree to restrictions on their content. Literally nothing in this statement is true. The article is about Chorus, which is a nonprofit that I helped found to build up a creator ecosystem, which everybody says they want, but few are doing.
Is that the idea behind this group is exactly what I've been advocating for years. For years I've been saying the left needs to organize independent media in the way that the right has been doing. The left needs to fund independent creators the way that the right does. The right has won even arguably presidential elections because they're organized with regard to online and independent media. They're killing us. We've been so behind. And this kind of support for creators is exactly what I've been advocating for.
There is panic among the left-wing creator ecosystem as Taylor Lorenz, of all people, has dropped an article from Wired magazine alleging that dark money groups are funneling money to Brian Tyler Cohen's organization called Chorus, and that is essentially dictating the politics of a bunch of left-wing creators, both established and upcoming, and supposedly they are being paid to the tune of up to $8,000 a month in order to produce specific content in line with Chorus's mission statement. Now, of course, Taylor Lorenz is a very sketchy person who is not worthy of trust. So what I want to do is actually go into her article, talk about the creators that are being highlighted, but also discuss what I think is happening, because I actually believe that the truth is in between what a lot of the creators who have come out and spoken out against this article have said, and of course what Taylor Lorenz is doing, and by the way, is doing based on her own agenda. But before we get into that, I want to thank everybody who funnels dark money through me over at actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
All right, I was not even going to talk about this because I hate participating in the drama. I hate the circular firing squad that often builds on the left. But it's really important that my audience know what's going on. So I am going to talk about it. I was named in an article in Wired yesterday. And the article is about a so-called dark money group on the left called Chorus.
So David Pakman released this dramatic video entitled "They're Trying to Take Us Down," where of course he opens with the classic YouTuber line, which is, "I didn't even want to talk about this. Normally I don't discuss this. Normally I would ignore this kind of thing, but I just can't seem to do it because I owe it so much to my audience out there in order to explain what's going on." Honestly, I'm sick of the YouTubeisms in these kind of situations. I wish people like David Pakman would get to the point, because what his point actually is, to me, is a bit ridiculous, although I understand from his skewed perspective how this could be understandable. So essentially, David argues that the right wing has this coherent, working together, interlocking media sphere. And because the right works so well together, because we all coordinate all of our messaging and attack at the same points, because it's all pre-planned behind the scenes, David Pakman has said that he wants to be a part of an organization where he ends up building up the left-wing alternative media, because the left is 10 years behind on the internet.com. Now, while I completely disagree with David Pakman's assessment that the right is this coherent monolith moving in one direction or another, when in reality, in my experience, what I've seen time and time again is a bunch of different right-wing creators ripping me off and not even giving me credit for the ideas and stories that they steal from me, in reality, I understand that there are certain media organizations and certain groups among the right wing that basically boost up talent and manufacture talent in order to bring them forth to the public. I mean, make no mistake about it, Brett Cooper is a product of the Daily Wire. This was an actress that they recruited, gave her own show. She was extraordinarily popular enough that she was able to go on her own, but she still started out as an industry plant. The same is true for Tomi Lahren, except she was somebody who was an industry chemistry plant over at the Blaze. So in reality, there are certain groups and certain organizations that attempt to foster talent, but the idea that the right-wing ecosphere is all of these influencers coordinating and working together is ridiculous and absurd. In reality, most of the people on the right-wing side end up just doing their own thing. They end up fighting against each other. There's a lot of pettiness over here, which I'm sure is not all that much different from what goes on the left wing, with one exception, which is, of course, because the left-wing narrative is in fact the mainstream narrative, they don't gain as much traction on the internet.com, because already at this moment in time, 92% of the mainstream media, outside of Fox News, of course, parrots their talking points, so there's no need to search the internet for a lot of people for these alternative viewpoints. So David Pakman, I think he's wrong, but I also understand that it's very likely that he believes in this, and in reality, I'm also not against, in principle, the idea of building up younger content creators. In fact, I would love to be the head of an organization or receive a stipend or something of the sort.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
In order to help boost up my channel and my content. However, that's just not the way things work, at least for me, and it never has. Now, according to this Wired article, it says influencers included in communication about the program, and in some cases, an onboarding session for receiving payments from the 1630 Fund, which is supposedly the dark money group that is behind this all, include people like Olivia Juliana, the centrist Gen Z influencer who spoke at the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Now, first of all, only in the radical mind of somebody like Taylor Lorenz is Olivia Juliana an actual centrist. If you guys will recall, this is a person that the left actually put forward as somebody who is going to lure men to the left-wing side, and she got really upset when people started making fun of her based on her weight, because she said, oh, she is really speaking to men. She knows men better than anyone. And again, I understand why people were mocking her, as well as the other people that they try to lure over to that side, because they seem to be completely out of touch and ridiculous. Remember, Taylor Lorenz, the author of this article, went on a podcast with a very flamboyantly gay person to talk about bringing men over to the left-wing side, and all they ended up doing was thirsting over Cenk's nephew during that particular episode.
The other thing with Hassan, he's unreasonably good looking and like cool and dresses cool.
Tell me about it.
But do you know what I mean? Like Hassan would be an influencer no matter what he was saying, because he is
hot,
very attractive and very cool and genuinely a good person too. I will say, like, Hassan is actually a cool, fun, good person.
Now look, if you want to learn a little bit more about Olivia Juliana, my friend Tony Ortiz over at Current Revolt actually did a lengthy sit-down interview with her, so you can get an idea of where this person is coming from. But based on the fact that she was given a speaking role at the DNC, I am not surprised to see her on the list of influencers that they're trying to build up over at this organization. But in addition to that, we have a few others who, again, most of which I have not heard of. You have Lauren Pierta, a former Playboy executive turned political influencer who hosts a podcast for Occupy Democrats, again, another sketchy organization. Barrett Adair, a content creator who runs an American Girl doll themed pro-DNC meme account. Sounds pretty lame. Suzanne Lambert, who has called herself a Regina George liberal, which is kind of embarrassing in my humble opinion. Aria Fodor, an education creator with 1.4 million followers on TikTok. Sander Jennings, a former TLC reality star and older brother to trans influencer Jazz Jennings. Now, if you guys don't remember, Jazz Jennings is one of those transes kids who was put through the procedure, which was broadcast on TLC in reality show form for entertainment at a very young age. It's embarrassing. It's ridiculous. And of course, there were a bunch of different articles and whatnot that Jazz Jennings and Jazz's mom talked about how Jazz wasn't doing the things to make sure you maintain your transness, and this was likely indicative of some kind of depression. But of course, they end up recruiting there, and of course, we have David Pakman and a few other people involved. Now look, based on the list of creators right here, I am not surprised at all whatsoever that some of these people are being propped up by money from a left-wing organization in order to keep them functioning. functioning. In reality, this is actually the stated goal of Brian Tyler Cohen, who is the founder of this particular organization, and he explains that the reason he wants to do this is to jumpstart these people's careers so they don't work a full-time job anymore.
So here's what Chorus is. It is a scholarship program to teach creators how to grow their accounts, foster engagement, launch their own shows, and become profitable on their own. It's an incubator program to build the pro-democracy ecosystem. Influencers and creators have never been more important when it comes to how Americans are consuming their news. The right has been doing this for years, and the left needs to catch up. That's why we're doing this with Chorus. So let's talk about what Chorus is and what it's not. Chorus does not pay creators for content, does not tell them what to say, does not control who they talk to or work with, and there is absolutely nothing in the contract that could even be reasonably interpreted to say that we do. Period. Full stop. I don't know a single creator who would willfully sign up for a program that would tell them what they can or can't say. That's not what this program is. We pay people to show up to workshops and technical trainings to optimize their content online. For example, we've got trainings on how to package content for YouTube, trainings on how to optimize audience retention for Instagram and TikTok, trainings on how to form an LLC.
And again, this makes perfect sense to me because there's a lot of people in the creator space that I can just look at and examine and realize by looking at them that there is no way, shape, or form that their job as a creator is actually paying the bills on its own because their economic model makes no sense at all whatsoever. Now, you compare and contrast that to me, where you look at my monthly views on a platform like Social Blade, and you can get an idea based on Social Blade estimates of a wide range of incomes for somebody like myself. Factor in Patreon, factor in Subscribestar, individual donations, and of course my website memberships, and you get an idea of how I can make a living that ranges from an okay living to a really good living, depending on, again, my monthly viewership. Again, it's easy to discern who has a viable model and who doesn't. And in that regard, by the way, David Pakman clearly has a viable business model. The guy has a ton of sponsorships, he has a ton of subscribers, he gets a bunch of views on many of his videos, and it doesn't look like he has a widespread operation. So I don't believe that David Pakman has sold out for the money for this particular organization, and I actually genuinely believe that he does see this as a way to foster new content creator growth in order to fight back against conservative media, which of course he doesn't understand fundamentally why it has grown so big. It's because unlike his content, which is very anti-Trump,
Trump bad, Trump bad,
which is very similar to the mainstream media, conservative media or online conservative media provides an actual alternative to a mainstream narrative.
Now, the article is riddled with inaccuracies, and they're not minor inaccuracies. First and foremost, this group has nothing to do with the DNC. People writing saying the Democratic Party is telling people what to say. At its base, the group has nothing to do with the DNC, period. Number two, I do not get clearance for anything I say. I do not run interview questions by anyone at Chorus. I don't tell Chorus when I'm going to be doing an interview.
Now, this is, of course, where I come into conflict with the overarching narrative from Taylor Lorenz, which is that all of these creators are being paid in order to say specific things directly by the DNC via these dark money groups, because in reality, as I've told you a million times on this channel, that is not how these influence operations actually work. This is something that people get wrong all of the time. What actually happens with these organizations that want to promote a specific worldview is that they don't reach out to people that disagree with them in order to pay them to repeat their talking points. And by the way, it has been made clear by multiple different people, including this particular article, that this organization has only been up and running for 1 month or 2 months. So the idea that they've had this broad influence already when they've been exposed basically at the start in the incubation phase is patently absurd and ridiculous. But the thing thing that Taylor and a bunch of these I'm holier than thou people don't seem to understand is that these organizations don't pay people to change their minds. They pay people and prop up those who are already aligned with them, those who already agree with the things that they want promoted, because it's much easier to do it this way. I mean, really think about it. You have organizations like Russia Today, who is now defunct, RT America, that hired figures from all over the political spectrum. You had Ron Paul, Jesse the Body Ventura. You also had Ed Schultz and a bunch of other people, both left, right, and center. However, they all shared one common belief, which was they were very skeptic of American policy, especially foreign policy, but whether or not they talked about that was irrelevant, because what Russian influence ops want to do is actually just get us focused on divisive issues. That is why they would have people who were super pro Black radical, Black Lives Matter, and also would have people on the flip side that would be arguing against that. It's not about what position is right versus what position is wrong. It's about getting people talking about divisive issues. Think about Al Jazeera and AJ Plus, all this left-wing garbage content that they spew out there about how America's corrupt, the millionaires and billionaires are financing everything, and all this stuff that reads very left-wing was being pushed by that organization, while at the same time undermining American foreign policy in the Middle East, because the whole point of Al Jazeera and AJ Plus and all of those groups is, again, to undermine confidence in the American system from whatever side. In fact, it's actually better for them to do it from both sides of the aisle, because if they do it in that way, guess what? People say, oh no, I'm getting the truth. I'm getting a real perspective here because I'm hearing from all these different various people. But I'll give you a little bit of a secret. I'll give you a little bit of a hint based on my own personal experience. I actually knew one of these people, actually a few of these people that ended up working at RT, and one of them, prior to signing the contract, promised me up and down that he would bring me on as a guest contributor for his show because he thought I had a good perspective. He liked to argue against me, and yes, this was a left-wing individual, but guess what? When push came to shove, I never once got the call to appear on the show. Never got a DM, never got a message, never got anything of the sort. And the reason for that is because they don't like the kind of content that I produce, because I am not somebody who throws America under the bus immediately in order to generate outrage clicks. You guys know my position on how ridiculous it is for everyone to be worried about World War III all the time, and I've stated so multiple times. So guess what? When it came time to give somebody the call, even though I had a connection, it was never me. You might find people who agree with me on a whole host of issues that are appearing on that show that give the illusion that they're going for broad perspectives, but in reality, what they wanted were my more divisive takes, or somebody similar to repeat more divisive takes, while at the same time not having any chance of somebody countering their main narrative, which of course is undermining American power across the world. Now, the same exact thing is true for these left-wing or right-wing organizations, and the beauty of running an op like this is that you don't actually have to have it in the contract that you're not allowed to go against this candidate or this narrative. In reality, all you have to do is set up a culture, recruit a certain amount of people, and because your donors are coming from a certain section of the Democratic Party or the Democratic Party donor base, it is just expected that people that are to be recruited are going to be aligned with the mission. Now, of course, Taylor Lorenz casts a sinister shadow over all of this, and part of the reason why is because she wants the Democratic Party to embrace the extremism offered by Cenk's nephew, and in fact, she dedicates a whole paragraph to condemning the DNC for not inviting Cenk's nephew to a bunch of different events, even though, by the way, he was invited to the DNC and allowed to broadcast there because, of course, they catered to him. He just ended up making it not worth their while.
Lorenz says that the 1630 Fund is, quote, a powerful liberal dark money group. 1630 Fund is our fiscal sponsor. One of the largest documented donors to 1630 Fund is the same person funding Meteor's Reporters in Residence program, which Taylor Lorenz herself is a part of. And guess what her monthly stipend is? $8,000 per month. So she's criticizing an entity that is funded by someone that she is currently taking money from. I guess it's okay when Taylor Lorenz gets paid, but no one else. The monthly stipend that we offer is so that creators can do this work full time.
Now, by the way, Brian Tyler Cohen also decided to throw Taylor Lorenz under the bus, talking about how she received a stipend worth up to $8,000. I don't know the truth of this, but she's denying this. Brian Tyler Cohen is saying that he's not receiving money on this, and it's an absolute mess. I love the infighting, but of course, I wanted to give you guys a perspective on how these operations actually work, because what you're seeing right here is basically competing sphere merchants going after each other, playing fast and loose with the facts. And just because we like the idea of a bunch of these left-wing creators being propped up doesn't mean we should get on board with somebody like Taylor Lorenz, who has been an advocate for censorship and all sorts of crazy things, and by the way, whose most viewed video on her YouTube channel is about people assassinating the President of the United States of America. No, I'm not kidding about that. So yeah, obviously, there is an astroturfing effort with certain creators. In fact, one of my friends, Nuance Bro, did a video on Harry Sisson and that other guy, Chris Mowry, I think his name is. If I'm wrong, then correct me in the comments, and then I'll delete that comment because I don't care if I'm wrong about what his name is, and how they received all this money from organizations like Midas Touch through their media organization. So yes, this does happen, and obviously it's a red flag when a creator has no viable business model but is living the high life, but I need you guys to understand that in reality, they don't really pay for people to change their minds or toe the party line. They just highlight people that are already going to do that. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, then show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the left-wing astroturfing campaign. Till next time.